What's going on, gangsters? MovieJohn here, and we're here to talk about the 80s. Remembering the 80s. This is a new series that I just dreamed up one day. Dreamed up. Is that a word? Dreamed? I don't know. I dreamed up of the 80s. Talk about the 80s, and not just one video, but maybe multiple videos. Different things that happened in the 80s. Because I grew up in the 80s, and yeah, it's my favorite decade because I grew up in the 80s. That's all I can say about that. But to me, it's the best decade ever. I wished it was still around. It was so much simpler times, you know, back in the day, growing up in the trailer park in the 80s, you know. So when 1980 rolled around, I was only 4 years old. Perfect timing to, you know, grow up in the 80s. From there up until about 15, 16 years old. But this first episode, I decided to talk about the music of the 80s. Woo! Now, if you're going to talk about music, you're going to talk about MTV. MTV, when they played music videos. I remember back in the days when MTV first came out in 1981. I was only 5 years old, going on 6 years old. And I remember getting cable hooked up, and you had a little box. And I remember the number that it was. It's funny how you remember things over the years, and then sometimes you can't remember what the hell you went into the kitchen for. But I remember it was on channel 19, and the guy said when he was hooking it up, y'all will love this channel. It's a new channel, and it plays nothing but music videos. And I was like, what the hell, gangster? Well, no, I was only about 5 years old, but didn't maybe say gangster back then. But I was like, wow, playing music videos. But, you know, when the first days of MTV, they only had a select few videos, and they had like 4 or 5. I remember Pat Benatar was one of the first videos. The video killed the radio star. That was the very first video they ever had. I think the group was called the Buggles or Bubbles or some shit like that. But who knows? They was only a one-hit wonder. It's called Video Killed the Radio Star. But, you know, they had people you know, like Pat Benatar, and there was a few other ones. I think they only had like 5 videos to begin with. But over time in the 80s, I mean, it just got better and better and better. And you had people like Madonna, you know, you had, you know, like the king of pop, man, Michael Jackson. It blew up in like 82, 83, 84 with Thriller and all that good shit. You had Prince. A lot of good pop music, which, you know, pop has its generations of music, just like everything else with heavy metal or rap or anything like that. So at that time, I think that part of the 80s was mainly pop. And I was growing up on that kind of stuff because my mama played that, you know, that music and stuff. So I was growing up on Prince and Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, Janet Jackson, and just everything else in between. And that was just the great time in the world, man, just listening to that kind of stuff. So all for you youngins out there that, you know, watch MTV now and you see Rob Dyrdek and Ridiculousness, and you've seen, you know, some of them other TV shows and these Survivor type shows and stuff they've had on there, and The Real World and all that shit, which is not real world, you know, not the real world. Back then they played music videos, baby. And there was one show that they started coming out with, was called Remote Control. That was a pretty good show. You know, you got to go in depth with more music and stuff, and you know, it was just pretty cool. You're sitting there and you had a remote, and you hit the buttons and you answer the questions and stuff. And then at the end, they had like I think 9 or 10 TV screens, and they had all these videos playing and stuff at once, and you had to guess 1, 2, 3, 4, and you had to do it within like 60 seconds or whatever. You had to guess what video it was, or the name of it, and who was singing it and stuff. So that was one thing that I really loved when, you know, I was watching it back in the days. I think it might have been out around 85, 86, maybe 87. It was out for a few years, but it was a pretty cool show to watch on there. But the music of the 80s, man, I mean, it seemed like they had more one-hit wonders than anything in the world in any other decade. Now, everybody's got one-hit wonders. Every year there's a few here and there. But the 80s, man, I mean, it seemed like anybody can make a freaking song back in the 80s and at least have one hit. And the world was so much different back in 1980. You know, in the 80s, you didn't have cell phones, and if you did, like in the late 80s or whatever, that's when cell phones really started getting, started coming out. You was rich or whatever, because they was big ass blocky things. But yeah, when I was growing up in the trailer park and stuff, just thinking of walking around with a damn cell phone was just unheard of in my neighborhood, you know, with the rich people. And then there was people that had them in cars and shit like that. But on with the music and stuff, though, it was great growing up in the 80s, listening to all types of music and stuff. And then they had the hair metal bands and stuff like that, you know, and just thrash metal was big in the 80s, you know. You had the big four, you had Slayer, Megadeth, and Metallica and Anthrax. They were the first four that started it. They call them the big four. And I had friends that liked that kind of stuff, and I had friends that liked Prince and stuff, and I had friends that liked rap. So I listened to a little bit of everything back in the day. So MTV definitely had a big influence in my life. You know, Channel 19, baby. And I remember later on they changed it to like Channel 6. I thought that was different. I was like, man, what happened to MTV, you know? But as you know, when the 80s ended and a lot of the music videos ended in the 90s, they still had, you know, some videos and stuff like that, but it started getting into like shows like reality shows with the real world and this and that and this and that, and then the time you get to the 2000s, you get a lot of bullshit on there, and then sooner or later there's no videos. I have yet to flick on MTV nowadays and see a video. They say they play them real early in the morning. I don't know. I just got my damn cable hooked back up. I ain't had cable in like 5-6 months. So maybe I'll look on there and see what time they have, you know, MTV videos, if they still have any. But, you know, in the 80s, there wasn't just MTV. You know, a few years later, VH1 came out. And I was going to say VHS. I always get that. Sometimes I want to say VHS. I thought I was going to say it, and I said VHS. VH1. Yeah, VH1. See, I really messed it up when I was starting to think about it. But they have VH1, and then later on, you know, they have VH1 Classic and all that stuff, and then there was MTV2 and all that bullshit. But I remember back in the days when it first started and the first few videos and stuff. And I remember sitting in front of the TV when there was a big premiere video, and the biggest ones was mainly Michael Jackson. You had Michael Jackson Beat It and Billie Jean, Thriller. There was really big events, and later on it was, you know, well, that was kind of almost to the 90s when they had the black and white one and stuff. But, you know, it was like an event. And when Thriller came out, I mean, I think that was the longest video ever. I think it was like 15 minutes, 16 minutes, and most videos is only 2 and 3 minutes. That was some great shit, man, to watch that in premiere. And, you know, I remember rushing and jumping in front of the TV at 8 o'clock when it came on. It was like, Michael Jackson's got a new video on. And you just don't have that shit no more, man. You know, you had, and I had cassette tapes and stuff, listening to music and stuff, but you just don't have it no more. And, you know, later on CDs and stuff, and everything's on your phone now, you know. And you can still get on YouTube and watch the old classic videos and stuff. So get on there and check them out or something, or check out old MTV interviews, you know, stuff with Headbangers Ball. You know, they brought it back, you know, a few years down the road too, but it was nothing like the 80s, baby. And that's just all I got to talk about with the music. Next episode I do, remembering the 80s, we're going to talk about movies. Oh, Jesus. There's a shitload of movies that came out in the 80s. A lot of cheese, a lot of horror, a lot of comedies. Just, oh my God, there's so much to talk about when you talk about movies in the 80s. But this one was dedicated to music in the 80s. I hope everybody enjoys it. And if you grew up in the 80s like I did, give me a comment at the bottom. Let me know what you thought about MTV, the music you listened to, and just your favorite stuff from the 80s at that time. And maybe I can do a video on other things besides just music. And movies is next. And then maybe I'll do one on wrestling and a few other different things that happened in the 80s. It's just out there, baby. It's, you know, sky's the limit what you can talk about the 80s. So I'll probably have quite a bit of these. So just keep on watching and keep tuning in, and who knows, I might talk about something you really liked in the 80s coming soon. So till next time.